Welcome to the Bridge of Two podcast. Okay, we're back. We were testing the levels for the first time, and it just turned into a hilarious little random conversation because of my
It's because you compared Harry Potter to Star Wars.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so, but I said at the beginning, I said that welcome to the Harry Potter Mug podcast because we're drinking coffee out of Harry Potter mugs.
I did happen to pick the two Harry Potter, well, we have like 4 Harry Potter mugs in this house, but I picked two of my favorite.
I'm sure you'll get more at some point.
I mean, we have a Ravenclaw one.
Yeah, I have that one.
The Honeydukes one.
Yeah.
And then these two.
Yeah,
Which is upsetting because we only have one Star Wars mug.
Oh, that is upsetting. It's a great Star Wars mug.
It is a wonderful Star Wars mug.
Because it whenever hot things are in it, it turns into magic. Space magic.
Space wizards. Space wizard magic.
Nothing more than space wizards. No. Just kidding. So, my name is Josh, and this is Jeremiah.
That would be me, Jeremiah.
And we are trying to do a podcast, or we are doing a podcast, because this is literally happening right now. And
we are in the fact.
Yeah.
In the fact.
The fact of podcast. And we basically just been talking about it and kind of skirting around it a little bit. We have lots of nerd things that we both enjoy and we like talking about, and so why not record ourselves talking about them? It makes it feel even more like justified. It's like we're setting aside, like, how can I justify setting aside time to talk about nerd things?
So we already talked about these things anyway.
Well,
so.
yes. Yes.
Might as well record it and see if anybody enjoys it. And if they do,
exactly.
Great. If they don't, well, we're still having these conversations anyway. So.
There you go. It's like there's all these episodes of a podcast you've never heard before. Anyway, so I don't know if we're 100% on the name yet, but we are big fans of Brandon Sanderson's writing, his books, and
all of them.
Every single book that I have not read all his books.
The Cosmere, I haven't read any of the other stuff.
Right, he has a connected universe of books that he calls the Cosmere, and the one of the most well-known series in that connected universe is called the Stormlight Archive. The first book in the series is The Way of Kings, and we both love that book very much. And in that book, there's as he calls it, it's an underdog sports story.
Is that how he refers to it?
He refers to it as that because I mean it's the same structure of that kind of story. You know, you have this underdog team.
First off, real quick, we should say too that very likely possibility throughout the podcast of spoilers for the Stormlight and any other nerd thing. And I'm just gonna say, if you haven't read the Stormlight or any of Brandon Sanderson, you should go ahead and pause this and just read it all right now immediately. I started it and I did not. It took me a year and I did not stop it. I read nothing but Brandon Sanderson for about a year, and it was the best thing I've ever done. So.
So if you don't like spoilers with things, then probably, this isn't a spoiler-free review kind of podcast.
Not even necessarily a review podcast either. More of just we're not going to intentionally go out and put out spoilers, but there's a very strong possibility that they are either just going to be said without even thinking about, or it's just going to be brought up because it's about what we're talking about.
Exactly. If the conversation is necessitating to discuss something, then...
And that goes for everything that we talk about, not just Stormlight, not whether it's Star Wars, Harry Potter, any type of thing that we tend to talk about. There's a strong possibility that...
Exactly. So just, you've been warned. Now, some people don't care about spoilers. Actually, like, for me, for instance, spoilers don't bother me all that much. There's certain times where I will be like, no, I don't want to know anything. But at the same time, when I do things get spoiled, it actually sometimes creates more anticipation for, getting to that whatever scene or watching that movie or whatever. So if you're that person, then continue on with us and on this journey. But so in just explain the name briefly. There's a group called Bridge 4 in the book series, and we will talk more about that later in the podcast, probably.
Almost 100%.
Because we're going to be talking about Stormlight as the main kind of topic later on. But so there's Bridge 4, and then there is in Star Wars, which Star Wars is another big universe that we both love spending time in. And consuming books and shows and movies. Games, yep. So
comics.
What'd you say?
Comics. Anything.
Mugs. Shirts. That we decided, like, let's try to kind of put these two things together in a name. And it's going to sound really quirky, but so we named it Bridge of Two.
With the subtitle... A far, far away bridge.
A far, far away bridge.
Simply because of Josh's wife making the mistake of saying a far, far away bridge.
Yeah, I think she was trying to say, galaxy far. There's a galaxy far, far away, and so she said a far, far away bridge, and it just really tickled us all whenever we were trying to think of a podcast name the other night, and so there's the kind of tongue-in-cheek subtitle. And so that at this point, that's probably maybe the strongest candidate, Bridge of Two.
I like it. It could definitely seem obscure, probably to some people.
It fits though, because it's like, if you know of Star Wars, you know that there's the reason that in all the Star Wars movies, there's only ever 2 bad guys with red lightsabers, called Sith.
Really dumbing it down here.
The reason is because this guy. Way in the past, was it Darth Bane? Yeah.
Darth Bane, basically, long story short, was just like, there were a whole bunch of Sith. He deduced through different teachings that by having so many Sith, they all would eventually end up kind of like teaming up to kill the stronger ones. Mm-hmm. So eventually the Sith would grow weaker through that, so he deduced that the best way for the Sith to grow stronger and to eventually overrule the Jedi, take over the Jedi, and destroy them would be to have only 2, one master, one apprentice, one to crave the power, one to embody the power. And eventually what that means is when the master trains the apprentice, once the apprentice grows strong enough to where they finally take on the master and they kill him, that proves that they were stronger than their master and they have gained everything from that master plus what they learned themselves, and then they take on an apprentice until eventually you keep on going.
And so there would only ever be a master and an apprentice, the rule of 2, and that stood in the canon from pretty much the time that he instituted it in perpetuity.
And I'm pretty sure that it's still canon that he's the one that instituted it.
Yeah.
I think Clone Wars technically made it canon.
Okay.
Again,
good.
I don't remember for certain, but I know Darth Bane is canon, so I'm assuming.
He'll always be canon to the fans. No
Plus,
matter
the rule
what.
of 2 is a thing as well. It's mentioned in the movies.
I mean, yeah, that's definitely in the movies. Yoda says it. Always 2 there. Don't get to hear my Yoda impression. That wasn't me trying. Yeah. So we got the rule of 2, and you got Bridge 4. So we put them together and said Bridge of 2. Because there's 2 of us, and we're bridging these topics of.
Wow, you made that way more.
I tried to.
You made that way more than I did. I was just
We're
like,
the Bridge of 2.
Bridge of 2. Bridge
We're your
4,
bridge.
Rule of 2. Ah, there you go.
We're the bridge.
We're the bridge.
I don't know if that works or not, but that was the idea behind it. So, if you have any ideas, name ideas of joining together, like, a Star Warsy name and a Stormlighty name, or like a Tolkien thing, or just anything like kind of that would say
fantasy, sci-fi.
Yeah, feel free to send them to us.
Superhero.
We'll read them and probably not make fun of them, because our name's Bridge of 2.
No promises. I mean, I made fun of my names as well.
That's
so
right.
I'm making fun of Bridge of 2 still, even though I love it.
Right. Exactly. So, check. So we've talked about the name. You want to talk about Bad Batch? at all? So
Bad Batch.
Maybe I can say before we get into it, just the way we're kind of planning on, at least for right now, ordering the structure of the podcast is having kind of a maybe more informal time, and then a transition. We're gonna drink some Buckland mead from a meadery in Vermont.
Meadery sounds like both alcohol and a meatery.
Like meadery.
And
it's made from meat. That's what meat is.
It is a beer made from meat, which is why we're going to eat it and drink it.
You can drink anything if you try. But anyway, so I thought that'd be a kind of maybe a fun transition, drinking some sounds like it's named after Buckland from Lord of the Rings in the Shire. That was like where
that makes sense.
Merry came from, was Buckland. We'll try that out, and then that'll transition us into like the main topic. So this is us just kind of talking a little bit about nerdy stuff, and then we'll get into the more focused time later. So yeah, go on to Bad Batch.
Well, first off, I need to go ahead and just wish everyone a happy Star Wars week, because it's Star Wars, so it's all week for me.
You celebrate the whole week?
I mean, I celebrate all year, but yes. For those who are wondering, I am a massive Star Wars fan. I've been a Star Wars fan since I was like 3. I think my dad and I, and a lot of people will laugh at this, but my dad and I saw the episode 1 in theaters probably 14 times.
Oh, wow.
We lived in Guam at the time. My dad was in the military, and their movies were like $1.
I was about to say.
So we would just, and I loved it so much. My dad was always about Star Wars, and I think my brother went with us most of the time. I think he copped out after 9 times, and me and my dad just kept going. So episode 1 has a special place in my heart, but Star Wars altogether has a very special place in my heart. But yeah, Bad Batch dropped, the new show in the art style of the Clone Wars, which, gotta admit, when the Clone Wars first came out, did not like the art style, but boy did it grow on me.
Like season 1?
Season 1, the movie, the
movie,
movie, and then season 1.
Yeah, I kind of felt the same way.
It was just new and strange.
Right, it was yeah.
But it definitely grew on me. The animation is, over the years, have progressively just gotten amazing to her. Mm-hmm. Like even like the last season of Clone Wars to now the Bad Batch. I mean, the animation is pretty astounding in my opinion. I mean, a lot of it's pretty astounding. But yeah, I mean, the show altogether, the story, I'm very intrigued by where they're going to go with the story. It's very nice to have a show. Because you've had a few books, maybe a few games. Like it's very rare that you have a show and or a movie that takes place almost directly after Episode 3, like Order 66 and all that.
Yeah.
Especially from the viewpoint of, like, clones, who obviously did Order 66. So it's very interesting to see where they're going to go with that. Mm-hmm. Seeing the Empire rise, how these specific clones are going to deal with it, and the other clones that, you know, like Rex, stuff like that may not have fallen to it. That's a spoiler for anyone who's curious.
Yeah, Jeremiah and I both are fans too of. There was a video game that came out called Republic Commando, and then a spin-off book series from that was I think was pretty popular.
By Karen Traviss.
Yeah, by Karen Traviss.
Very popular. I think there's definitely a following in Star Wars, and a lot of people actually still see it as one of the better Star Wars series or books.
Yeah, one of the things it was known for was how it humanized the clones, and because I'm pretty sure, I don't know if the Clone Wars show is out yet.
No, the Clone Wars show because her books are coming out right before Disney took over.
Okay.
And Disney is kind of what I think, like maybe 2 seasons into Clone Wars, Disney is when Disney took over Star Wars.
I think you're right.
But her books ended before that, I think, because of certain, I don't remember. She's written.
They at least started before that. They at least started before the Clone Wars. And,
yes.
And because I remember like thinking, kind of comparing the Clone Wars show and the clones to how she portrayed them, which is similar. She gets more into. She kind of gave them more of a Mandalorian kind of backstory that all the like. The people that train, like every single squad of commandos was trained by a Mandalorian, and so they kind of got the Mandalorian language and the Mandalorian culture kind of mirrored onto them from the training. Anyway, so it was interesting. That was an interesting way to show the clones as more human and their internal thought process about what do they think about the Jedi, taking orders from the Jedi, what do they think about eventually Order 66. And the Bad Batch, to bring it back to the Bad Batch, definitely reminds me a lot of that same kind of idea. Like, they remind me of like a commando squad.
They even, to an extent, I mean, they very much heavily they remind me or are very reminiscent to me of the Null Arcs in that series, which is basically similar to the Bad Batch, a group of kind of like genetically and altered clones, mainly made specifically to kind of give a little bit more freedom of thought, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
But their freedom of thought almost made them less likely to follow orders, so they ended up latching onto one of the Mandalorians, one of the Mandalorian trains, and they basically all at one point, just even as clones and are still following the Republic, are basically just full-on Mandalorians at that point.
Right. Yeah, they basically became like a clan of. They called themselves Clan Skirata.
And that's what the Bad Batch. I mean, the first time Bad Batch was introduced in the season finale or the final season of Clone Wars. I mean, this is initially one of my first thoughts was just this reminds me a lot of the Null Arcs.
Yeah.
From that series.
It's almost like the Nulls without Skirata, without their their Mandalorian. You know, they called him. What did they call him? What they called him was Mando for father. I forget what it was they called him, but because it's been a while since I've read the books. But they remind me of that because I was actually thinking when I was watching the Bad Batch. You know, they don't really have, like, I know Hunter is kind of their unofficial leader. Like, he's not actually their leader, is he? They're just kind of like Hunter. Is he their actual leader, or is he just kind of unofficially?
He is
the leader.
I think he's technically the leader.
Okay, squad leader or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know if that was. I don't think it ever really mentions whether or not he was designed to be, or whether or not.
I think that what's his name? Was it What was the Crossfire?
Crosshair. Is it Crosshair?
You would be more likely to be right than I am.
Crosshair.
I only watched that Clone Wars arc recently, a couple weeks ago, but so anyway, it just reminds me of the Commandos without, or the Nulls without kind of a father figure, because they're trying to figure out, you know, what they think about all this. They don't really know what to think, and they're going in different directions, and so I think it's really cool. It'd be interesting to see where they go with it. I haven't watched episode 2 yet. It's out today. But
I have also not watched it yet. I'm waiting to watch it with my wife.
It'll be interesting to see like what stuff they actually dip into, you know, different characters and different early rebellion arcs and stuff like that. You know, what will they do?
I also real quickly, pretty sure they called him Buir.
Buir, yeah, B-U-I-R.
Which is Mando.
You're right.
For father.
Yep.
So they all referred. They basically saw the Null Arcs basically saw him as their father.
Exactly.
I mean, he raised. Actually, they were.
He raised them. Yeah. They were going to be killed.
They were going to be killed, and he was like, "No, I'm not going to let this happen."
Exactly. Yep.
So they definitely saw him as their father.
Those guys. I think they were kind of bred, like they were this. I think it was similar to the Bad Batch in that they were trying to enhance certain things.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they were necessarily. I don't know if they were trying to enhance their strength or anything like that, but they were trying to enhance them, and in doing that they were way too just not as unpredictable. Yeah, wouldn't take orders, more
once again very similar to the Bad Batch, you know.
Exactly.
Throughout the story too, it's mentioned a lot that a lot of the clones respected the Null Arcs, but were almost fearful of them as well because of how different they were.
Mm-hmm.
And how the Null Arcs themselves didn't really think too highly, specifically of like the regs, just the regular clone troopers, a little bit more of the commandos. Shinies? No, that's in the Clone Wars.
Tinnies or Shinies is what they call the droids in Clone Wars.
I think Shinies is a reference to newer clone. I don't remember.
I can't remember. We need to reread those books.
Yeah, I'm really. I need to get the first one back from Steven.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that would be a good maybe a series to do, because those books aren't big either.
Those books are amazing.
But yeah. So be interesting.
Yeah, just very interested to see where that show's gonna go. I'm interested to watch the second episode.
Mm-hmm.
But I can see it going a lot of places. I'm intrigued by this Omega character too, because she's not mentioned in any other media so far. I think this is her first interaction. I'm curious to see. I'm always curious when they bring a new character into a Star Wars show, especially when it takes place like maybe like in this one, like in between 3 and 4, where we now have 6 more movies after that, and a lot of more media after that. To see where they actually eventually end up putting that character, what they end up doing, because there's got to be a reason why they're not in the main events of the Star Wars, you know? So,
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
And that's what the same with like Ahsoka with her whole stuff is like, it was interesting to see what they did with her, so we can figure out why isn't she part of like 7, 8, and 9 when those movies came out, you know? Obviously we know realistically it's because she wasn't a character yet when those are coming out or whatever, but they usually do a good way of explaining it in universe. So I'm curious to see what's up with her, Omega, and the Bad Batch altogether.
Yeah.
Just because they're not seen anywhere else.
Right, yeah, they can't make it out. I mean, they could, but I mean, like they did like canonize. They were able to canonize Rex because they took the person in that one guy in,
which was too much of a fit. It's almost kind of creepy.
Oh yeah, because he like literally looks like him. Yeah.
And then
smart.
Was very interested to see what they did with. I know you didn't notice it as much because you didn't watch Rebels.
Have you watched Rebels?
I've watched the first season. I want to go back and watch because I heard like season 3 and 4 were really good.
It sounds like the storylines are really good. For one thing, I had a period of time where I just didn't wasn't as following the Star Wars shows very much, and what was going on in them and the different lore and stuff they were kind of building, but. Also, the art style, I kind of bounced off the art style.
That's what drew me away from Rebels.
I can't stand how thin the lightsabers
are. One season 1 is a little bit more. Same thing with seasons 1 and 2 of the Clone Wars. It's a little bit more. Okay. I don't want to say childish, but maybe a little bit more childish. Maybe not as thoughtful on the story. And then yes, the art style of Rebels, specifically coming from after like really growing to like Clone Wars, it just threw me off.
Yeah.
And you're right, the thin lightsabers just drive me up a wall.
Have you seen where they did, like, someone took the fight between Maul and Obi-Wan?
And they...
Spoiler alert. On Tatooine.
Well, which one do you talk about? The one on Tatooine.
On Tatooine. Yeah, which one? They fought
Wait, Maul's alive?
No, on Tatooine.
Have you seen that fight? Yeah, I've seen it.
They took that and they made the lightsabers big.
Yeah.
They made it a little too big, I think, but... It's just funny how people take stuff, do that kind of thing. Anyway.
But anyway, that being said, they redid kind of Kanan, the Jedi in Rebels. They kind of redid his origin story as to what happened to him during Order 66. Because there was a comic made about Kanan Jarrus.
Oh, really?
The Jedi from Rebels, about what happened. It kind of starts about right when Order 66 happened. And so actually, I've read a few little... not articles, but like posts about people not upset, but maybe a little peeved because they liked the comic, but they basically, with the Bad Batch, they retconned that comic because they changed what happened what happened to him during Order 66.
Okay.
Or where he was at or what was going on. Obviously they made it more oriented with the Bad Batch clones. And obviously I'm talking about Caleb, the Padawan in the first episode.
Right. Yeah, I
didn't
know that.
Kanan Jarrus or Jarrus. I don't remember how you pronounce his last name, but.
Star Wars names can go almost any way.
They really can. Just wait until we start talking about Stormlight.
Yeah, let's think about that. That'll be interesting.
We're going to both be saying two completely different ways to say the name.
Well, should we... let's pause, and we're going to grab the Buckland Mead and crack it open, and you guys can hear us cringe or enjoy it, or however we
find out.
We'll find out. And we'll get back to talking about nerdy stuff. So let me hit the pause button here. All right, we're back. We took a break to grab the Buckland Mead. So before I open mine, so you can get the sound of
I already opened mine. Delicious. I haven't taken a sip, but I've already opened mine.
That's fine. But yeah, so I'm going to just read what it says. So it's Buckland Mead from, I did not look up how to pronounce this, Groenfell Meadery, Groennfell Meadery. It's a craft mead with green tea and lemon.
which I'm curious about because I'm not a tea fan. So we'll see how this goes.
Ooh, let me read. And I was commenting that it says Buckland Mead, and it's a pint. So if you like the think of the quote from Lord of the Rings, it comes in pints. I'm getting one. So that's perfect. But it says, as the ground thaws, and snows melt, and green things come back to the land, Buckland Mead springs into being.
Well, that just sounds epic.
It does. I bet it's going to
There's
spring
really not
into
that much
being in my
here
mouth.
either. Water, honey, green rooibos, lemon juice, potassium sorbate, and sulfates.
There you go. Protect flavor.
Caffeine free.
It's what? Yeah.
I thrive off of caffeine.
Well, get some more coffee.
No, I can't. I got work tomorrow.
Oh. You gotta be able to sleep. Okay, here's the sound of it opening.
Crisp. That crisp snap.
Okay, you've already tasted it.
I haven't tasted it.
You haven't? Okay.
I was about to, but I was like,
alright, let's do it. Same time. Interesting.
It has a hint of green tea, but not overly so to where I feel like I want to vomit. It's a lot sweeter than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, same here. I mean, I read someone talking about it and saying it was like just super crisp and it is actually really it's a really good like kind of smooth drink.
It doesn't have that after oomph on your throat like a beer does.
Yeah.
Like a Yingling
no, it doesn't. Yeah, it's not.
Like that.
It's like
it's very smooth going down.
It's subtle carbonation.
Yes, that's yeah.
It's not like overly carbonated. So
definitely taste. I mean, you definitely taste the green tea. Definitely taste the honey and the lemon. But it's not like none of the tastes are overpowering the other. They actually seem to work very well together.
Yeah, I like this a lot. I like I think I like Arizona green tea.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was curious. Sometimes whenever you like something and then you get like an alcoholic version of it, it's like horrible.
Yeah.
So.
Yes. Oh, trust me, I know.
But I saw enough good things about it that I thought it'd be perfect, and it just happened to get here today. So I was like.
Oh wow! I didn't realize.
Yeah, it literally came today, and I was like, "This might be like the perfect thing to try on here."
Well, thank you for sharing with me because it's very, very. It's actually really good. I'm actually very impressed with this.
Share a pint of Buckland Mead with those you care about.
Aww.
Okay, so Stormlight Archive.
My pride and joy. Not my pride. I didn't write it, but I still hold it as my pride and joy.
We're all a part of it. We're all part of the success.
Probably one of the best series currently, in my opinion, in my mind. I don't think right now there's a book that beats that for me as the Storm. Well, I mean, Mistborn's a close second, but it's also Brandon, so it's just the same thing anyway.
Yes, and very similar. I think so. For those who, if you've not heard of Stormlight Archive, you may have heard of The Way of Kings. That's the first book in the Stormlight Archive. So when we talk about that, we're talking about the series that started with The Way of Kings, so I've been a huge Tolkien fan for most of my life. Like I was 12 or 11 when I saw the first movie. Got super into the books. Read them all before I was in high school, and I've read the Silmarillion a lot of times.
I've never read the Silmarillion.
It's different.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah, it's different. But if you're like, how whenever you like something a lot and you like just reading more lore about it, and see like you're on Wikipedia and you're reading about, this guy and you're reading about it and you're like, oh, that's really cool. And then there's a link and you click on it. It's kind of like that in a book form because it's like, you like Lord of the Rings? Well, here's here's like the Wikipedia of like the whole history of the world. Like it starts with a creation account. Literally, the beginning of the book is how the whole world came into being. It's really beautiful, I think. It's like music. It's like there's these I don't want to get super. This isn't a Silmarillion podcast, but anyway, my point. We'll save that. But
I'll have to read it. I'll have to read it and let you know what I think.
I should. I think I'll just reference Silmarillion once every podcast. So
there you go.
It's not too much.
Okay. Only one.
So that was it. But yeah, so like Lord of the Rings and Narnia, those are kind of what people call classic fantasy. And I didn't read a whole lot of fantasy besides Tolkien. I just stuck with Tolkien most of my life. I've read a lot of other books. Like I've read like Star Wars books, and I've read the Harry Potter books, and I've read a few other fantasy books like. But the Brandon Sanderson is definitely what's considered modern fantasy.
Yes, he's definitely modern. Yeah,
and how did you discover The Way of Kings? Did you already read Mistborn?
No. Okay. So I'm a very avid reader. Have been an avid reader since I was pretty young.
Yes, learned that quickly about you.
Yes, I've been full-on fantasy, sci-fi, anything of that sort. I like to read. I've read a lot of Star Wars books in my youth, and still now. I'm currently growing my collection of a lot of the Legends books. I didn't read Lord of the Rings until a couple years ago.
After you read Stormlight, right?
No,
okay.
I know this was before.
Okay.
I think it was before I met you guys that I did read Lord of the Rings. No.
I remember you talking to me about it when you were reading through it.
Yes. Okay. So
I didn't know if that was the first time or not.
I don't think I'd read Stormlight yet. I think I was in the process of finding a new book.
Okay.
But I read I knew of it because my dad's a big Lord of the Rings fan, and I obviously watched all the movies.
Yes.
I read a lot of Terry Brooks,
right.
which is very Lord of the Rings influenced. Stuff like that.
There's a lot of things that are Lord of the Rings influenced. A lot of things are Lord of the Rings influenced.
Yeah, but I mean,
I know what you mean, yeah.
Terry Brooks has specifically been like, this is like, I just love Lord of the Rings.
Right.
And I like his books too. Terry Brooks is a good author too. I would recommend some of his books, some of his older books. Sword of Shannara is a good one. But I can't remember exactly why. But I was looking for a new series to read. I kept going by The Way of Kings in the Barnes Noble. The thing is, though, and for those who don't know, The Way of Kings is a 1,000-page book.
Over
1,000-page book, and then book 2 is like 1,200, and the book 3 is also like 1,200. Book 4 is also like 1,400. So it just keeps going.
Yeah.
So they're very daunting. And so I didn't want to I was kind of at first scared to get invested, but I kept reading. Actually, kept seeing people talk about it on like when I was on Reddit or Instagram, stuff like that. Like I was looking at what people say about it. Finally, I was like, you know what, screw it. I was at Barnes and Noble. I decided to go ahead and pick it up and read the prologue just to see. And if you read the prologue, you'll know it immediately, like, just the world building, the hints at magic, and the hints at a certain story. Just the prologue alone, or interlude, or whatever, prologue, it was a prologue, just capture you, and that captured me. And then I read chapter 1, which showed off a lot of the action, I think very well.
Yeah.
With how the magic works in a combat scene. And if you know anything about me, I like combat scenes in my books and movies and everything like that. I'm a big action guy. I like seeing action played out in weird ways as well. And that one prologue caught me, and then the first chapter just, like, I was hooked.
Yeah.
And then from there, I think around that time I picked it up, my girlfriend, now wife, was going to doing a trip to Paris with some friends, and I literally read that book in about a week. If that. I could not put it down. Mind you, it's a 1,000-page book.
Had some spare time.
And I literally I was not at school at the time, I was just working.
Yeah.
So I just read, knocked it out. And then went to book 2 and then book 3.
How long after you finished book 1 did you go immediately?
I went immediately to book 2.
Okay, wow.
I literally went book 1, 2, 3 back to back to back. I just took me a little bit longer to read 2 and 3 because I slowed down a little bit. I think I started going back to school through book 3.
Okay.
Or right nearish there, I can't remember. So
Nice. My brother-in-law, my sister, twin sister's husband, he had started that book, and he had told me about it, because he's an avid reader too, and he likes sci-fi. I feel like he's pretty equal on sci-fi and fantasy. He'll get on a kick, and he'll just like
that's what I do. I get
stay
on
on
kicks.
sci-fi for a while.
That's usually how I am. Is I get on kicks too.
Right.
Usually it's like when I was reading Stormlight, it was a big fantasy kick.
Right.
But I've gone through sci-fi kicks, Star Wars kick. So I definitely understand that.
But at some point, he had started the Way of Kings, and he told me about I remember him describing shard blades and how they work to me. Which so the way shard blades work is they are these huge swords that shouldn't, like, they're in shapes that shouldn't be possible, like, physically for a,
like, weight wise, like, they're huge, like,
right,
they should weigh, like imagine like if you play Final Fantasy, like,
right,
like with Cloud's Buster Sword, or for some older people or for more manga fans, Guts' sword from Berserk. It's just, they're huge. Crazy.
But the thing about them is it's not just that, these are huge swords and so they're gonna, like, do a lot of damage. They're like, I don't know, you could say magical, but they are, they're magical swords, and when they cut, if they cut something that's not alive, it like cuts right through it as like if it's butter. Nothing. If they cut something that's alive, then it just dies. It doesn't dismember.
Yeah, it doesn't like if you were to cut through someone's arm, it wouldn't cut their arm off like you would think a normal sword would. It actually
dead. Their arm goes dead.
Basically, it takes the soul from that section, and so their arm is still there, but it's lifeless.
Right. And there's a whole reason why. It has to do with the lore of the magic system and the lore of the whole Cosmere in a way.
Which we'll go into at a later date.
But
that's a whole 15 episodes.
He was describing that to me, and I was like, "Oh, that's interesting. That's different. And I thought it sounded cool. And he was talking about the king, the prince, the different princedoms and how they were at war and stuff like that. But there was this other big threat, and it sounded interesting. He would just talk to me about it, and then he got about halfway through, and I think, it's a big book. So I mean, he'd read a lot of it, and then something distracted him from it. Maybe he wanted to read a different book, and he put it down and didn't pick it back up. And then Jeremiah actually was telling me about, like, I had heard, I've been trying to become a writer for a while, and in the circles and the videos, a lot of stuff that I've been listening to, I had discovered Brandon Sanderson, the author of The Way of Kings, his writing lectures, and so I had started listening to those, and I was like, yeah, eventually I need to read some of his books actually, and Jeremiah was reading The Way of Kings, and he was just telling me how great it was, and I needed to start it, and I was like, yeah, I know, I just kept thinking it's so big, and
that's what everybody thinks.
I got the audiobook for it, and I definitely was hooked. I was hooked a couple times. I feel like because the prologue or it's a prelude. There's a prelude.
That's what the prelude.
There's a prologue,
and then the prologue,
and then there's technically it's like another prologue, but because it's chapter 1 from the perspective of a different character about the main character. But the prelude is like Jeremiah was saying, it just it makes you ask so many questions about this world. Immediately, you're just like, this is crazy. Like, what is going on here? Why are there, who are these beings that keep talking about dying and coming back and having to fight again? And what happens to them when they die and they're being tortured and all this stuff? And then they have this oath that they're breaking, but the world doesn't know. And it's just like, what is going to happen next? You just want to know immediately. And because it tells you right at the beginning of the prelude, it's 2,000 years ago or 4,000 years ago.
Yeah, the prelude takes place
so you know that it's you're about to read a 4,000 years later, because this is 4,000 years ago. And so you're like, what's 4,000 years of this what just happened here going to do to this world, you know. I definitely was. I'll just stop there for now on that. But so that was kind of how I discovered it. I started reading it, and I definitely stuck with it, and just loved it. It was very different from like Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
Not a bad, it's not a bad Lord of the Rings being Lord of the Rings and how it is. It's not bad at all. It's great. That's a great book series. It's my
Agreed.
It's probably my favorite, book series in a lot of ways. But what Brandon Sanderson does, and what the more of a modern fantasy trend is, where you kind of look more in depth at characters and their just how.
It's a lot of character building, character story.
Exactly.
It's very the books are Stormlight Archive in itself. Well, a lot of Brandon Sanderson books actually are very, very much driven by the character.
Mm-hmm.
There's an overarching story, and there's a lot of world building and magic system in it. But a lot of it too is, and a lot of where he excels, I think, as a writer is his character building, and he makes you really invested in these characters, and he makes the characters very, despite being in a fantasy world with magic that we can never dream of, very relatable.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that too is part of what gripped me with the Stormlight Archive, specifically. Was just some of the characters that, like, even as like a regular person in life could relate to.
Mm-hmm. I think that he starts pretty much all his characters. They start off, they're kind of broken people where you start with them in a lot of ways. I mean, should we get more specific? Talk about the main characters?
I mean, yeah, we can. But yeah, you're right. They start off. A lot of them start off broken or in a certain situation. Mm-hmm. I think the main one that really starts off broken though is Kaladin.
Right, and he's the main. He's kind of the main character.
Specifically
of
Way of Kings too. He's
book,
like the main character. Each book so far has gone through someone's past. Like each chapter, or each book has a certain chapters throughout it that kind of goes back into someone's past. First book is Kaladin's. Second is another character, Shalon. Third is Dalinar's. And Kaladin, definitely specifically, you can just from the very beginning that this man he's a broken man, from just so many different traumatic events that have happened in his past, and he takes on a lot of those mistakes and brings them in, like, blames himself for them, despite them not necessarily being his fault.
Yeah. Which is kind of, that's a big part of his journey as a character. So that's the thing about the Stormlight books is, the characters have flaws and they have issues that are, you'll read it, and lots of books are like this, but Brandon Sanderson just does it super well, where you're reading it and you're like, this, he's really being really hard on himself. He's not doing what he's doing is actually not being helpful to himself or others, but that's kind of the point, is to see them realize, their own problems and how it's affecting others, and other characters helping them realize that, and it's cool that the magic system itself is almost built around character development. So like as they develop in characters, and it feels it could sound very video gamey, but in the story and the world building, it feels completely authentic. That whenever they reach this milestone of their character kind of getting over another kind of hurdle or step of something that's in the way of them moving forward, they kind of like level up in the magic system.
Get stronger to an extent, or level up is a good way of going about it. But it's done in a way that's very fluid, very real, very, like, it doesn't feel very like video gamey. It can sound like it, especially when you put it in those words like leveling up, but like it's just character growth.
Right.
It's character development, character story, and just when they do get stronger, but in a very real sense.
Right. One thing about the Way of Kings too is people talk about how brutal it is. Like, brutal is up front. It's There's a lot of, because of Kaladin's kind of the main character, and so when you come to him, you know, he's got a lot of depression. He's in a really tough spot. He's a slave, and he's already tried to escape a bunch of times, and then so he's kind of at the bottom of the, you know, he's at rock bottom in a way.
He's hit his rock bottom.
Yeah, and the amazing thing about, I mean, the thing, so when you're reading it, you're like, man, this is just so hard to just keep coming back to this, just how brutal this all is. But what Brandon Sanderson does in these books is he just pushes the characters as far as they can go, and then the plot, like whatever the, you know, the main kind of the main problem in the plot, the main problem with the character setting, all of it comes together at the same time. They call it, the fans of the series call it a Sanderlanche, like, because it's like an avalanche of things happen all at the same time. It's like this, like he, you know, has this epiphany about something, and he moves it forward, and that actually is the vehicle for solving this huge problem that's happening. You know, saving the day happens because of character development, basically.
And he does it so expertly too.
Yeah.
I mean, like it once again, it just feels so. It doesn't feel forced.
Right.
And it does. It all eventually all comes to a point, and it all connects, and like,
yeah,
in ways that you wouldn't even necessarily expect them to either. You know.
Right. And it's such an amazing relief, you know, whenever that moment comes, because it's just been this slow burn a lot of times of things getting worse, trying, and like making some progress, but then despite the progress, things go horrible. And then when that relief comes of you know, the character kind of pushing through and saving the day, it's the relief of it is just like makes it all feel so much more rewarding.
Yes.
You know, and you know, I think that's you know, something that I enjoy, because, you know, like life, to bring it a little bit into this world, life can be really hard, and
absolutely,
things can stack on each other and build up, but there are moments where there's this hope of relief, you know, and when that comes, it's a kind of a otherworldly, you know, thing. Whenever things everything looks like it's going the wrong direction, and then, you know,
yeah. So
that's I think something that's a big strong point, a very connecting, resonating thing with those books, you know. So.
No, I agree absolutely.
Right, but what else?
Can't say anything more about those books. They're just so good.
Yeah.
I mean, if you are a person who's never read those books, or have maybe walked past them like I did, and like, oh, it's so big, I don't know if I can invest it. It is an investment. They are long, and it takes people. I think it took my wife multiple months to finish it, because she gets distracted easily. But even she was just like, it was worth reading through. I
read the prelude.
Yeah.
I mean, just read it.
Go pick it up. Go read it.
Like, do you want to know the answers? Because they're all there.
You're gonna want to know the answers, and then you're gonna, you know, end up like me, and you get too invested and read everything to find out all the little nuanced things that are in these books, and cannot recommend them enough. Like I said, right now, probably one of my favorite series is the Stormlight Archive. I'm currently reading through the 4th book. Right. I'm a little bit slower on it than some people.
Because you were reading.
I was reading
through the series.
I was rereading the series, and then I took a break and read a Star Wars book that just came out, which, Light of the Jedi, I think it's called.
Yeah.
Would recommend. It's not the best Star Wars book I've ever read, but it's intriguing enough to recommend it to someone to read.
Yeah.
If you like Star Wars, at least. Definitely leaves you kind of wondering where they're going to go with it. So.
Yeah. Maybe.
To bring it full circle back to Star Wars. At
right.
least.
That's where we got to start and end. Bridge of Two.
Bridge of Two.
So, should we tease we didn't really talk about what the next episode would be.
Gosh, I don't even know.
I mean,
there's so much the next episode.
We talked about just kind of like our first few episodes being sort of high level, kind of just talking about the different things that we like to, the nerd universes that we like to spend time in. So, Star Wars would definitely be one.
100%.
This would be one. Maybe Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, I mean, I could have some Lord of the Rings in there.
I could definitely talk about that a long time. Cause
there's always some D&D as well. Me and Josh are both D&D players. We do have our own little campaign with some friends that we do.
It'd have like a D&D episode.
So you can definitely do that.
So there's some things on the docket that might be coming your way if you plan on tuning in. If you have any thoughts or questions or things topics you think it'd be fun for us to discuss, and you've listened to this, then we will be providing some type of contact information.
Yeah, we'll have to make an email list like that. I already get too many emails, my personal email, so we'll have to make something. bridgeof2@gmail.com. Don't send anything there because I don't know if that's it or not, so don't.
Doesn't exist yet.
But there will be something, and obviously, please send in if you have any thoughts, any suggestions, anything. I mean, anything anyone here talked about, or you're curious more about us, send it in. We'll talk about it. This is fun. This is fun for us. We like I said at the beginning, we talk about this stuff, just the two of us at like family dinners and stuff like that. We are related to an extent. My wife is his wife's sister.
Our wives are sisters.
So we spend decent amount of time together.
That helps.
So we do this already. And we decided, might as well just put it out in the podcast. We'll see what happens, just for the fun of it, and hopefully people enjoy it. It'd be great if you guys do, and we'd love to have a bit of a following and make friends doing it,
Absolutely. We'll still do it even if you don't, though.
Exactly. We're just gonna.
You can't defeat our spirits.
Yes, we'll do it for the 3 family members that we have to listen to it.
Exactly. And we'll just listen to it and just that was a really good point I made.
Exactly. And that's what we're gonna be doing.
All right. Well, this was Bridge of Two, a far, far away bridge. And Jedi are just space wizards, so that's what I always tried to explain to people about Harry Potter that were like concerned about it. Be like, do you think Star Wars is okay? Yeah, Star Wars is fine. Because Star Wars is literally just space wizards.
I mean, yes, but it's also, okay. Hold up. We're already gonna have issues because I love Harry Potter, but Star Wars, if someone was like, would I like Harry Potter? My first reaction would not be to be like, well, do you like Star Wars? Because they're pretty different.
No. Not me trying to convince someone to like it. Trying to convince someone to not be like, Harry Potter's evil because of wizards and witchcraft. Oh,
okay, yeah. I mean, I guess that's fair. Yeah. That's fair. I mean,
So definitely not like saying.
To be fair, too, Star
Wars.
They're
for the same audiences, but just saying like the way the magic system works, because, I mean, Star Wars it has a magic system. It's
100%.
It's not, it's not like based in some kind of like known scientific law, like science fiction.
Wait, what? It's not.
Maybe.
I thought we just lost all that information because Galaxy far,
I guess
far
I'm
away.
just outing myself as an unbeliever in the Force.
Exactly.
Binding
you
all
must trust
together.
in Space Jesus. His name is Anakin Skywalker.
I don't even want to stop recording because this is so good already.